The fourth milestone, or capacity, is called shared social problem solving and interacting with a continuous flow. Both components of it are important. However, the continuous flow is the key to everything, as Dr. Greenspan used to say. This fourth milestone is the most important milestone, even though they're all important. He would often refer to it as if there's only one thing you can work on continuously, whether you have a nonverbal or verbal child, it's working towards or expanding on this continuous flow idea. What social problem solving is defined as is our ability to socially navigate challenges around us. If there's a toy on the shelf, can we grab someone by the hand, lead them over to the shelf, point to the toy, nod when they touch the toy, and then take the toy from them when they hand it to us? Multiple steps of gestural and possibly verbal exchanges that allow us to solve a problem that we experience. This capacity begins when children start learning to assert themselves and initiate a bit more. So when a child does reach their hands out of the crib or start shaking the bars of the crib to get the caregiver over, they're actually problem solving in a way to try and get this caregiver to get them out of the crib. Whether they tap the door and they look at you and start shaking the doorknob, that's social problem solving because they're looking at you as an indicator to show you they want to get out of the room. Now, if they're just shaking the doorknob over and over, that is not social problem solving. It may not even be considered real problem solving if they keep doing it repetitively. But nonetheless, if they're doing something on their own, like dragging a chair to a shelf or trying to open the door on their own, that's problem solving, but it is not social problem solving, which is actually a very important distinction because for children with communication deficits, if they learn full independence, they learn to do everything on their own before they learn to communicate. Unfortunately, they have less motivation to learn to communicate. And there's a reason why 1 and 2-year-olds are requesting help, because they're not fully independent. So if all we do is focus on independence with many children, they learn individual problem solving, but they do not learn social problem solving, which has to be a primary goal, not one of the secondary, tertiary ones like independence. Also, what does a good problem solver do? They don't try the same solution over and over. So jiggling the doorknob over and over, or even just looking at us as they're doing it repetitively, is not really complex problem solving. Certainly it's basic problem solving because they're trying to solve their problem by looking at us and getting us to understand what they're trying to achieve. However, if they then take us by the hand, lead us to the door, put our hand on the doorknob, and then we shake our head, say we can't go out, and then they grab someone else in the room and try it again, or possibly with our other hand, what you're seeing is they're showing a more dynamic solution set. They're coming up with many steps, many ideas to solve this problem. The problem may ultimately not have a solution because they may not be able to leave the room, but nonetheless, they are trying different things. That is the sign of a good, more complex problem solver. Many children will either escalate by trying the same thing over and over repetitively with increasing intensity, or sometimes avoid and shut down and withdraw. Neither of those are adaptable, healthy solutions. If a child is able to come up with alternative solutions and be creative and flexible, now we have a really complex problem solver. And as you can see in the description, the more steps that they're coming up with, the more ideas they're coming up with, the more responsive they're being to the things that we're showing them we can or can't do, the more we get into what we call the continuous flow. This can happen certainly around getting needs met, but it can also, and often is most important to happen, in play. This is the continuous back and forth pattern of social exchanges of a look, a smile, a shake, a nod, a grab, a pull, a point. 20 to 30 back and forth exchanges is what qualifies for the continuous flow. Now you can have the beginnings of the continuous flow with only 5 or 10 back and forth circles of interaction. However, to be solid at this milestone, you have to have 20 to 30 steps of interactive abilities with a caregiver or an adult in a continuous and consistent fashion. And this is actually necessary for language development. Many studies have actually shown now that our gestural communication with our motor system, again, grabbing, pushing, pulling, smiling, nodding, shaking, pointing, etc., all of these gestural communicative patterns and tools are actually meant to be used in larger and larger patterns and sequences. And they found a few things. Number one is that adults who have been measured to have broader and more complex gestural communication repertoires as children all had better verbal skills. But even prior to that, they found neurologically that it's a necessity to develop these gestural communication patterns prior to language emerging. So we know that it is not just something we do developmentally according to our age, that we do this in our first year to year and a half, develop these gestural patterns, but actually it's a neurological necessity that in order to access the left side of our brain, which is where our language is located, we have to be maturing and developing the right side of our brain, where our motor system is, and using it for communication first.